Okay. All right. It looks like it's running. Well, this is my first time doing a stream, so we'll see if we can make this work. All right. Well, this gets started. This is DarkSpace, old game, launched back in 2001. And what's a good way to describe this thing? It's not an RTS. You actually control and captain ships. Um, like so. This is the ICC. There are two other factions, the UTGO and the Caluth. Caluth being aliens. UTGO are also humans, as are the ICC. This here, for example, is an ICC heavy cruiser. You have your typical controls for a game like this. You can increase your speed, burn. Now, this being a much older game than some stuff that exists now, you do not have up and down controls. You are stuck on a single plane. Not that up and down doesn't exist, it kind of does. If you try to occupy the same space as another ship, you'll probably lift up above it, or if you're the bigger ship, you will go underneath it and force another ship to, well, it kind of depends on the ships. Some do, some don't. For example, a dreadnought, and if you're a small enough ship and there's like a dreadnought, you'll probably fly over top of the dreadnought. But you can't actually control the up and down. The ships have got weaponry, as you can see. They've got different things you need to control. You know, you've got your energy. Typically, energy is not something you need to overly concern yourself with unless you're using some of the more specialized ships like stealth ships and things like that. You get your whole health here. You get your armor health up here and your shield. So opposite armor and then the shield. That's your, like I said, your weapons. But I'm kind of starting on the deep end here with a heavy cruiser. And so that's not going to, that is much, much, much later. Well, roughly later into the game. Not what you start out in. Alrighty. So, once you start the game, you will be at this screen. You will see different star systems, and you'll see the jump lanes between the systems, or jump gates between the systems. Green, of course, are yours, and reds are unfriendly. Whether or not they are UTGO or Caluth, well, you'll have to look closer to be able to tell that. Also, white will indicate yours as well. White planets are planets that you can deploy ships from. Green are just controlled by or your faction. Alrighty. So, when you get into the game, you'll kind of see this screen. Of course, a new player won't have all these items in here that you pick up from killing enemies and kind of loot. I really should clear that out one of these days. Anyway, you have 9 ship slots, and if you want to use a different ship and your 9 slots are filled up, you'll have to remove one. There are ranks that you start from, midshipman being the very first one, which means that you'll typically start in around the scouts and the frigates. Don't believe there's any destroyers that are available for midshipmen. I think that is the lowest rank you can get a destroyer at is probably ensign, but it has been a long time, and what ships can be used by what ranks has been reworked due to how small the community has been these days, so that way a new player can actually achieve things. Because back in the day, it was more of an emphasized team game because there was enough people online to do that. These days, that's not so much the case. In many cases, you'll find yourself operating alone. It would be nice to see the numbers on the game increase, but as of right now, typically it'll be you or a friend, or maybe if you're lucky, 2 or 3 friends. But the game is free, so if you find you like it and you want to get more people on, that's always an option. So you kind of start out with scouts. You know, your midshipmen. Scouts are interesting craft. They typically are for hiding, sort of. Many of them have the ability to not cloak, as in like a Romulan or Klingon, or that optical cloak. That actually belongs to the Cluth. They're capable of doing that. But here for the ICC, they have really good ECCM, and in cases ECM. They specialize at hiding their signature, sneaking around, and kind of spying on the enemy. This one is the sensor corvette. Again, it is very definitely for spying on people. It's got a nice electronic warfare suite, like it shows here. You got 2 ECCMs. You only got 1 pulse beam, but then this is a corvette. Interestingly enough, you do for a corvette. It has a pretty good firepower. 3 heavy railguns. That's actually really good. The recon scout has got 2 pulse beams, so this really doesn't have much for weapons, but it is very good at the hiding because it's got 6 ECMs, so it can pretty much make its signature, well, below 0. You're going to be your detection signature is going to be negative, and you could potentially hide other ships near you because the ECM field is big enough that you can hide some ships that are near you if you have it powered up all the way, which is very useful. But it is a little tricky because it requires you to kind of fly in formation so that the ships near you don't fall out of your coverage. Then you've got the stealth corvette. This one is less going to be able to hide other ships and more about hiding itself because it's only got 2 ECMs. However, it does have fusion torpedoes, which are a very powerful weapon. I'm not sure if this ship can have its fusion torpedoes swapped out with Sabo rockets, which are kind of like or Sabo missiles. They're kind of like no, they are rockets because they're not guided. They're kind of like a kinetic kill warhead. They don't really have explosives. They rely more on their kinetic power. Fusion torpedoes are explosive. But they're kind of a short-range weapon, so the idea behind this ship is you're very stealthy, you get up near your opponent and just dump 6 torpedoes into them and just keep doing it until they're dead. And because of the ECM, they'll have a hard time seeing you and targeting you. The bomber corvette, very, very simple. You've got 1 bomb, 1 pulse beam. The pulse beams for the ICC are kind of your point defense weapons for shooting down missiles or fighters or mines, but the Merv bomb is for bombing planets and destroying structures and troops on the planet. Fairly simple. The customs corvette, kind of a point defense ship. Other than that, not much use to it other than the ECCM to try and get through other people's ECM. Kind of electric warfare, kind of like the sensor corvette with its 2 ECCMs to break other people's ECMs. After that, you've got the frigates. So you got the assault bomber, but that is for a second rear admiral. Don't remember why. Well, I guess kind of. It's a bomber that's not a dedicated bomber. I mean, it's got a bomb, it's got a point defense beam, but it's also got 6 fusion torpedoes, so it can fight if it needs to. You've got your line frigate. That is a captain rank, a little bit more powerful. It carries 5 ion tracking missiles and 3 heavy Gauss guns. Actually, pretty little powerful little ship. Now you got your Saber frigate, which again is that's a captain. You've got 4 pulse beams, so good point defense. A heavy beam laser, which is very unusual for the ICC. They don't typically have heavier energy weapons than, or at least heavier lasers than the pulse beams. But so the heavy beam laser is unusual, and then the chemical beam lasers, again, kind of unusual to have that many lasers on an ICC ship. You've got the sensor frigate, which is, again, with 6 ECCMs. It's to help counteract enemy ECM and allow you to be able to see them. It's got 2 heavy Gauss guns. Slower rate of fire than the rail guns, but more alpha damage and a longer range. The thing about that is, though, at planets you can customize your weapons loadout. So, for example, like kinetics rail guns or Gauss guns, you go to a planet, you can swap those out, put in heavy rail guns if you prefer the rail guns higher rate of fire. That kind of stuff can be customized, but that's what it comes with stock. Then you've got the assault frigate. 1 pulse beam, heavy pulse lasers. One of those. Okay. Then a chemical beam laser. Again, you don't tend to see this many lasers on the larger ships. This is more of a frigate thing. And then 6 fusion torpedoes. You get the standoff frigate, which has the ion tracking missiles, and you get 2 mines with this one, or 2 mine launchers. You'll have more than just 2 mines. You can create minefields. The standard bombing frigate, ensign, instead of like the corvette where scouts. Unlike the scouts, you've got 2 bombs instead of 1, so a little bit more damage. It's not really going to help you get through a point defense grid, though. Point defense can shoot bombs down. Not enough bombs to get through. Let's see. You've got your missile frigate here. That's a midshipman, so you can actually get that pretty early. So 1 pulse beam and 6 anti-radar missiles. Again, missiles can actually be swapped out to some extent. Then you've got the mine layer frigate at ensign, and that gives you 3 mines, but that's about it. So all that ship is really good for is laying mines. You've got your patrol frigate, which, again, ensign, so you can get that pretty early on. 2 heavy rail guns and 2 rail guns. Decent enough armament, not as powerful as some of the other ones that have higher ranks, but still not a bad ship. Then you've got the torpedo frigate. Again, it's 2 ECMs, so it can be stealthy if it needs to be. 8 torpedoes, so again, kind of sneaking up on your opponent and peppering them with torpedoes, and then probably getting out of dodge as quickly as possible, because this ship is not got a lot of health to it. Pretty much, the scouts and the frigates don't have a lot of health. Their way of surviving is not being hit. They're very small, they're very fast, they're very maneuverable, which allows you to dodge incoming fire. And also they've got very good ECM and ECCM. Then you've got the Lancer frigate, which, again, it's a bit unusual for the ICC, but it seems to be a current thing with the frigates. Some of these weapons got rearranged back in the day from what they were in the early days. It didn't used to have this many energy weapons in the frigates, but it seems that they decided to decided to give those during that period of refit. But I had already gotten past the frigates at that point, so I wasn't really using them anymore. But yeah, 7 chemical beams. Again, it's going to be great at point defense, nailing missiles, nailing fighter craft. But you have to be careful because that's going to be kind of a short range issue there. So that's going to be, you're not going to want to, you're not going to be able to engage in long range engagements with this ship, which is kind of what the ICC like specialize in, but this is going to be a more of a short range. But it would be a great escort vessel for larger ships since they don't really have the point defense range to properly counter things like fighters. Missiles, of course, are going to try and close and hit you, so not having super long range on your lasers is not as detrimental in the point defense range. But the fighters have a tendency to engage you outside your laser. It'd be difficult to counter them. This ship, on the other hand, could probably counter them. And then, of course, you get the sniper frigate, but this is a more of a specialty ship, so you really have to be a high rank to get it. You need to have a bunch of badges earned to get it. So this is one of those things that is more difficult to get, and that's probably because it's got a lot of ECM, so it can really find enemies that are trying to hide. And it's got 5 anti-radiation missiles and 3 heavy Gauss guns. Gives it quite a bit more firepower than your typical. Then after frigate, you go to cruisers. Sorry, not cruisers, destroyers. For example, here you've got the Cutlass destroyer at Vice Admiral, but that's not your typical destroyer ranks. This is one of those slightly more upgunned, more powerful destroyers. You got 2 pulse beams. You got 8 Sable rockets. Those are those kinetic kill rockets that I was talking about that you can swap out the torpedoes for. Ion tracer missiles, 6 of those, and chemical beam lasers, 2. You get your mine laying destroyer. This is a fun hull type. I actually kind of like the look of this hull. Little kind of submarine looking type thing. You've got 3 mine launchers, so more than what you typically find on frigates. You've got pulse beams, you've got chemical beam lasers, and you got 12 fusion torpedoes. Again, those chemical beam lasers are going to really help you with your point defense and helping protect larger ships. I'll also be mixing up my lasers. Anyway, it's been a while since I looked at what the larger ships carry. I know they carry lasers, so I can't remember what they're referred to. I'm pretty sure they're the pulse lasers. But anyway, then you got the Arrowhead destroyer. Again, kind of a higher tier 1. But you get your pulse beams, your chemical beam lasers, 6. This is definitely kind of a picket ship for protecting larger ships with those 6 chemical beam lasers. Your heavy railguns 3, railguns 2, and heavy beam laser 1. So yeah, definitely meant to protect the fleet from incoming fighters and missiles. Escort. You got your combat destroyer, 2nd rear admiral. Again, kind of a higher tier thing. Amplified pulse beams. So those are pulse beams, but a little spicier. Heavy railguns 3, railguns 1, chemical beam lasers 2, and fusion torpedoes 10. So you can really smack somebody with those. A good destroyer. I've enjoyed using. You've got your command destroyer, again 2nd rear admiral. The destroyer is really where you start to see higher ranks used. Like higher ranked players will rarely, if ever, drop down to frigates or scouts unless there's like something very specific they need to do, or they're just feeling cheeky and want to sneak around. Destroyers, higher players will occasionally get down to them because the destroyer still retains a lot of speed and maneuverability that the larger ships just don't have. You've got 2 pulse beams with it. You've got 7 ion tracking missiles, 2 MIRV bombs, which is kind of interesting. So this that means this thing can actually do planetary bombing, but still engage in regular combat, which is definitely a bonus, especially if you need to take out items on a planet, but you're by yourself and you don't have people to help you. Which can leave you in a sticky position if you're just trying to do it with a dedicated bomber, because, well, when the enemy jumps in to stop you, well, you pretty much have to run away at that point. Then you've got the escort destroyer. You've got 2 pulse beams. You got 3 heavy rail guns, 6 ion tracking missiles, 2 rail guns, and 2 chemical beam lasers. Kind of a medium combat vessel. That's your first rear admiral. Okay, here's more what you're going to be using early on. This is a lieutenant commander. You've got pulse beam, anti-radiation missiles 8, and chemical beam lasers 2. So kind of shooting down missiles, and, well, not so much shooting down missiles, but you can, and chucking missiles at your opponent. You got your interceptor destroyer. This is at a 2nd lieutenant, so again, more of an early game ship that you'll be able to get. Pulse beams, heavy beam lasers, and chemical beam lasers 7. So it's gonna be more of a kind of an escort type ship. I know, like, escort's in the name of some of these, but like with that many lasers, your goal is to shoot down fighters, shoot down incoming missiles, sweep minefields, because lasers are good at taking out mines, and then hit and run attacks. If you're attacking other ships roughly your size, you're going to be running in, hitting them with the lasers, and running out quickly before you get where your shields and armor get whittled down to nothing. Even at destroyers, you still don't have a lot of healing. Then you get the escort destroyer. You got amplified pulse beams 3, chemical beam lasers 2, and pulse beams 4. So that's definitely, again, kind of the screening the fleet type of a design. And that's going to come in at commander. Now these also, I should have been pointing out, but they typically have different internals. Some of these are going to have more armor or shields than others. ICC is kind of a balanced build. They have shields and armor. UGTO, they're just armor. The Luth are the aliens. You can choose them as a faction to play. They don't have shields. They're just armor, kind of like UGTO, but they have a cloaking ability, which allows them to hide. And when I say cloaking ability, it's not like, oh, I'm going to put up ECM fields and hide that way. It's, I'm going to actually have an invisibility field that actually hides me, which can be a very tricky thing to combat. Then you've got the bomber destroyer, so you've got three bombs with that, and a pulse beam and a chemical beam laser. And that's going to come in at 1st lieutenant, so again, a very early on ship. 2nd lieutenant for the patrol destroyer. Amplified pulse beams, chemical beam lasers, heavy railguns, and railguns 4. So that's actually pretty good armament. And like I said, you can customize those to fit your playstyle. If you prefer the longer range, heavier hitting Gauss guns to the higher rate of fire railguns. They're a little shorter range. They're still, railguns are still going to be a longer range than lasers and torpedoes. Then you got the torpedo destroyer, amplified pulse beams. It's typical that you're going to find pulse beams, at least 1 or 2 on pretty much everything. And then you've got your chemical beam lasers. Variance torpedoes, which are the more powerful torpedo, which is actually kind of interesting to see on a 1st lieutenant ship, considering how powerful variance torpedoes are. You don't typically see those on just any ship. That's typically go to very powerful ships. And then you get your fusion torpedoes 8. So this is actually a very interesting build, especially with that variance torpedo. Like I said, they are the most powerful torpedo that the ICC can get. And then this one that's still even locked for me at Grand Admiral, and then a ton of badges that you have to get to be able to get the ship. Then you get your pulse beams and your heavy. This gets a heavy valence autocannon. They are an interesting weapon because unlike the railguns and the Gauss guns, they're an energy weapon that goes actually in the same slot as Gauss guns and railguns. You could swap these out for heavy Gauss guns or heavy railguns, but not all ships can do that. Not every ship that has a heavy railgun or a heavy Gauss gun can swap out heavy balance autocannons, unless they made that change and I didn't know. So I'll have to check later when I get into a ship. But the last time I was swapping out weapons, you couldn't just do that. Certain ships could have them, but most ships can't. But it's an energy weapon, which means unlike the railguns and the Gauss guns, you have unlimited ammo. However, the trade-off is that you are a shorter range, roughly a shorter range, but it's still a bit more range than what you would typically see for energy weapons. But the downside is the further away you are from the target, the less damage you do. So you want to get up close, and you want to, as close as you can, to do as much damage as you can. Their rate of fire is also very much higher than a railgun or a Gauss gun. Well, higher than a Gauss gun and higher than even a railgun, which is higher than a Gauss gun. You got fusion torpedoes, chemical beam lasers, and then heavy beam. So this is a very powerful ship, and it's got some interesting features to it that unfortunately are locked behind a higher rank. So if you want to play with this thing, you'll have to get to that point. This is not an early game. This is a very late game. Very late game. Then we go to the cruisers. It's right here at the bottom. You get your light cruiser at Lieutenant Commander. So again, one of those more early game ships you're going to be able to get your hands on. Pulse beams and heavy railguns. 6 heavy railguns. This ship is very well armed with those heavy railguns. If you want to, you can swap those heavy railguns out for heavy Gauss guns, and you'd have like a nice sniping ship. Not sniping as in missiles, because missiles will be able to reach out a lot further. But the Gauss guns are a little bit more reliable on hitting the target. You can't interdict Gauss gun or railgun rounds like you can missiles. Those you can shoot. So then you've got the Tempest at a captain rank. You've got 3 pulse beams and then 12 fusion torpedoes. You've got a narrow band ECCM, so you're good at, you can use that to counter other people's ECM, but you're not really hiding with this one like you could with like the torpedo destroyers and scouts and frigates. This isn't gonna, you're not really gonna be able to hide with a cruiser that's in active combat. So that's just, but with 12 torpedoes, you can definitely put some hurt on a target with that. Then you've got your stealth cruiser. The stealth cruiser is got a lot of ECM, as you can see. It's got 6 of them, and it's got anti-radar missiles. This, unlike the scouts and frigates and destroyers that are built for stealth, this isn't really going to sneak up and smack an enemy ship at point blank range with torpedoes. This one's more, I'm going to hide and I'm going to fire missiles at you. And the advantage to that is you can stay, if you're playing it carefully and balancing all your stats properly, you can stay in your ECM, stay hidden, and keep firing your missiles. And it's difficult for an opponent to find and shoot you while you're doing that. Then you've got your storm cruiser. This is got 3 pulse beams, 3 heavy beam lasers, and then 4 chemical beam lasers. Again, this is a kind of a fleet CIWS short-range brawler. If you're into the short-range brawling, like I said, the ICC, typically their tactics are not short-range brawling. They don't typically have the health for it. They do have shields, but the shields are more for allowing them to engage in hit and run tactics because the shields will recharge outside of combat. Technically, they could recharge inside of combat, but there's no way you're going to be actively in combat and be able to get your shields back to full. That's just not going to happen. You typically will want to break contact with the enemy, let your shields recharge, and then re-engage. Then you got your auxiliary cruiser, lieutenant commander. So again, kind of that early to mid game. You get your pulse beams, and you can drop 5. You got 5 mine. So that's gonna allow you to make the bigger minefields. You get your missile cruiser. This has got 10 anti-radiation missiles. It's not hiding like the other one, so yeah, but you've got 3 more missiles. And again, like I said, there's different missiles. I've never been a missile player, really. There's other people I know who run missiles. There's different types of missiles for different jobs, and they have different effects, and I'm not an expert on that, unfortunately. But I really should, at some point, play around with the missiles more than I do. I tend to prefer guns, but then you've got the heavy cruiser, which is a very fun cruiser. And kind of a mainstay, but that's a little bit more later in the game at Admiral. It's definitely a tanky ship. It's got quite a bit of armor for ICC. It's got good shields, and it's got 3 pulse beams, 3 heavy railguns, 4 railguns, and then 12 fusion torpedoes. Like I said, swap those out for different things. I personally like putting on the heavy Gauss guns instead of heavy rail guns, but it's kind of each to everybody's play style. Then you've got the assault cruiser, pulse beams, heavy beam lasers, and then fusion torpedoes. This is get up to that mid to close range and just smack somebody with pretty. Then you've got the jump cruiser. You've got planetary siege missiles, which are a little bit interesting. I haven't used them a lot, well, much as you can tell. I haven't unlocked it because this is under Admiral, and then you need a bunch of badges. I'm at Admiral, I just don't have all the badges unlocked. But they allow you to kind of snipe at planets and like hit the buildings and groups on the planet at range, which can be quite useful if you need to siege a planet because it's too heavily defended, either with, well, I would have said ships, but there's a good chance that the ships are just going to shoot your missiles down before they even get to the planet. But planets can have a lot of anti-ship weaponry on them, which could mean that some of the other bombers just can't get close enough to use their bombs, in which case you try to use this to snipe those anti-ship weaponry off the planet. Let's see, then you've got the border cruiser. Heavy Gauss guns 5, pulse beams. It's an interesting build. Again, I haven't got to this one, so I'm not really kind of an expert on this one. But that's a lot of firepower for a ship, for a cruiser, that is. And it's got let's see, where is it? Oh, 5 ECCM. So it can definitely break all but like the stealthiest ECM ships. It's definitely going to find you. Let's see, then you got the light carrier. This is where you actually get into the carrier gameplay. This will be the first carrier at Commander. This has F-29s. It can carry 4 of those squadrons, and it's got 3 pulse beams. So you are definitely not getting into a direct confrontation with the ship. That would be the last thing you want to do. You want to sit off away from your opponent as far as you can and direct your fighters to go attack them. That's what you're supposed to do with this. Then you've got the jump cruiser. This, if I remember correctly, yes, this has a wormhole device. I, again, don't have this. I don't have all the badges for it. I've got some friends that have got it. This is an interesting ship in that it lets you create a wormhole, and you can choose where the opening is, and you can choose where the exit is. And that means you can get into all kinds of hijinks. You can. I can't remember if they ever got rid of the ability to put the exit of the wormhole in a star. I know that used to be a thing. I can't remember if that got patched, but you can put the exit really close to a planet, or even if you can't put it in the star, you can put it really close to the star, and then you can pick the entrance zone. And if you do it correctly and you get your timing right, you can set it like right in front of an enemy ship. The enemy ship will go into the entrance and then exit where you put it, and you can force people to collide with planets or stars with that. Again, it requires a bit of finesse with the timing and everything, and also your opponent not expecting you to do that. So these ships can be a nuisance if you end up fighting against them. Then you got your other carrier cruiser class. Again, Fleet Admiral, a bit above what I'm at. Once you get to the higher ranks, it takes a while to get leveled up, especially, although they have decreased how quickly they've decreased how much XP they don't really call it XP, but essentially XP. They've decreased the amount of XP you need to level up since I started playing back in the day. So it's a lot faster now, but it's also less people online. So it's nice that they actually did that, because with fewer players on, it was getting very difficult to level up. The decreasing the amount of XP you need to level up has made it definitely better and a little nicer in that regard. But this is a little heavier, a little tankier than the other one. Still, you don't have much in your point defense beams, and you still only have four F-29 squadrons. But yeah, you've got some more stuff to play with. You've got more ECM, so you can hide a bit better. I believe it's got more health on it than this little tank here, so can't get wiped out quite as easy. This is a ship. It's kind of my goal to get to it, but it's a very difficult ship to get to. Requires the rank of Marshal, and like I said, badges. This is the strike cruiser, and it's unique in that it has ion cannons. The only other ship I believe to have ion cannons is a combat dreadnought, and the ion cannons are an energy weapon. Or are they technically an energy weapon? They kind of are. They require ammo for them, though, so they're not unlimited fire like some energy weapons. But it's kind of an energy. What's the best way to describe it? I think technically they need ammo because they're a particle accelerator, and you need to have actual particles to feed into the accelerator. I'm not quite sure the justification for it, but it does require ammo. Anyway, they are the longest range, hardest hitting guns in the game, or at least for the ICC. And then you've got a variance torpedo. Again, like I said, the most powerful torpedo that the ICC can get their hands on. So this ship packs a punch. And that's kind of why it's so high up there. You've got the firepower that's starting to equal that of some dreadnoughts. So yeah, that's kind of why it's so high up there. Then you've got your dreadnoughts. Also, I should point out, red is stuff that you don't have the rank for. Gray is stuff that the planet isn't able to spawn it. That's because the ships have a resource requirement and a technology requirement. Typically, you're not running the planet out of resources necessarily, but it could be that the planet doesn't have a high enough technology level. You raise the planetary technology level by building buildings that help the planet's technology level. We'll get into that once we get to the engineers. But Also, the other thing I should mention is that one nice thing about having ships here in your kind of like in your inventory, like I said, you can only have 9 of them, and if you want to put in another ship, you'll have to drop one. The nice thing about having ships here in kind of your ready rack is that even if the planet doesn't have enough resources to pull it, if you've got it over here, you can pull it. But that does come up with the thing that you sometimes, not always, and I'm not necessarily sure how this rule works. Sometimes you can't pull it from all planets. Let's see, I'm not sure. Again, I haven't tested this out in a long time, and I never dug too deeply into it because it didn't concern me too much at the time. But sometimes you can't pull ships that are in your ready rack from some planets, possibly because they don't have the resources to pull it. But if you've got the ship in your ready rack, and for example you docked at this planet, you will always be able to pull it out of this planet. Well, providing the enemy doesn't capture it, in which case you'll have to undock from someplace else. I know that's kind of confusing, but trust me, there's a lot of different things in this game that you have to take into consideration. And while I enjoy playing this game, I am not the biggest expert on this game. I know how to play this game. I can tell you how to play this game, but there are people who've been playing this game since 2001 who know all the ins and outs of all the mechanics of this game and can tell you all the lore and all the history and all the upgrades and changes that the game has had since 2001. And that is beyond my my current capabilities. But I really enjoyed the game, so I decided it would be a good idea to let people know about it. Alrighty. Now, this, let's see, yeah, we were talking about this. So one of the first dreadnoughts that you'll be able to get is that Captain, and it's a combat dreadnought. It's a very tanky ship. It can dish out, and it can take a beating. You've got 4 pulse beams for point defense. You've got 10 heavy railguns, and you've got 2 ion cannons. Again, like I said, the ion cannons are one of the heaviest guns in the game. This one gets 2 of them. That cruiser got 3, so you can kind of tell why that cruiser's so special. The railguns on this ship can be swapped out, like I said, Gauss guns, or I know that this ship can also have them swapped out for variants autocannons. Some people like to do that because then they can stay in the fight for a very long time because this ship is really tanky and they don't have to worry about ammunition. I prefer having that medium to long range, so I kind of like doing Gauss gun railgun mix or an all Gauss gun build. The all Gauss gun builds are fun. They're definitely really good at breaking enemies' armor if you're dealing with bigger ships. A all Gauss gun build is not necessarily the best if you're dealing with a lot of little ships attacking you, but if you're fighting other like dreadnoughts or even cruisers, the all Gauss gun build is a fun build. Then you got the bomber dreadnought at first rear admiral, but you need to get the, in order to use it, you need to get the gold bomber badge, so you have to go out there and bomb a lot of planets, and I haven't bombed enough planets to get that one. This has got your 5 pulse beams, but the cool, interesting thing about this is it's got 7 bomb launchers, which could potentially allow you to break through somebody's point defense. Some of the bombers with the smaller bomb racks, even a transport that's sitting in orbit of the planet with their single point defense laser could potentially stop your bombs from hitting if you're trying to shoot at something that they're currently within range of protecting, and so that can be a problem. This, with 7 bombs, if there's a transport, you probably still get some bombs on the planet. The 1 point defense or 2 point defense lasers probably won't be enough, so that's kind of handy. But it's dedicated towards bombing. you're not really in a position to get into a knockout drag-out fight with this ship if somebody shows up and decides to contest you trying to bomb the planet. Then you get your missile dreadnought here. You've got 10 missile launchers. These are linear drive missiles, but there's like 3 or 4 different missile types in the game that you can choose from, and 5 pulse beams, so you got pretty good point defense there. But pulse beams, again, they're kind of on the shorter range, so if somebody's going after you with fighters, you're kind of going to be in trouble because they don't really have the range to engage fire. Then you get the fleet carrier here. This has got 8 fighter squadrons, and you can swap out the fighters for different things. But, and then you get 5 pulse beams. Again, you're going to want to stay at range with this and just send your fighters after the opponents. You do not want to get into a fight. Unfortunately, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, the AI is not really the best at using carriers. I know that they may be working on this. I can't remember the last thing I saw about it, but one moment. I'm gonna pause here for a second. I'm getting an alert. Okay, never mind about that. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, the AI is not great at using carriers, and they won't deploy their fighters at long range. They will deploy their fighters, and that can be a problem for you, especially if you don't have the weaponry to deal with them. But they will also fly around you at close range. They don't really have the weaponry to fight you. In many cases, the AI won't even use their beam weapons. They just have their beam weapons set to point defense. They don't attack with them unless you fire missiles or something like that, and they just kind of fly around your ship at point-blank range, which means they're relatively easy to take out. Unfortunately, limitations of the AI in the game. But players using carriers can be quite scary if they know how to handle them properly. Then you've got your assault dreadnoughts, again, a little bit above what I currently am able to pull myself. But these things pack a punch. You've got 12 fusion torpedoes, you've got 3 variance torpedoes. That's very powerful there. And you've got 6 heavy beam lasers. This is going to be kind of a mid to close range ship, probably more of a mid range with all this torpedoes. And then let's see. Yeah, you got plenty of armor and active shielding. You're gonna be quite tanky. And then you got your line dreadnought. Pulse beams, as is pretty much standard at this point. You got like 4 of them, but again, you got enough range to engage most missiles before they hit you, as long as you're not being overly swarmed. But you don't really have the range to catch fighters out. Fighters are going to fire and turn away and burn away from you before they get within range of your pulse beam. So that's where some of the other things with more powerful lasers come in. You got 12 heavy railguns, so lots of firepower there, and Harpex missiles. So you've got really, really good long-range capabilities there. Especially if you swap out those heavy railguns for Gauss guns. 12 heavy Gauss guns is a lot of firepower. And then combining that with missiles, you will definitely be a long-range standoff with that. Then you get your heavy missile dreadnought. 6 pulse beams, so again, we're going a little bit better here than the missile dreadnought at 5. You've gone down to 8 missile launchers, but these are line drive missiles, and if I remember correctly, they're a lot more powerful. No, actually, no, those are line drives too. I am not sure why. Like I said, I don't necessarily know all the nuances for the ships I haven't unlocked, but that's why. It's got 4 ECMs, so it is, yes, way more stealthy. Interesting that they refer to it as heavy, though. sometimes the terminology does not quite fit what you would typically expect. But then you got Siege Dreadnought, Harpex Missiles 8, Planetary Siege Missiles 6. So again, this is going to be like trying to snipe things off of planets that are very, very heavily armed and defended. You got your flagship Dreadnought with 14 heavy railguns. So that's a lot of direct firepower that you can throw at an opponent. Advanced tactical sensors. You're again, this is a Marshall. I'm kind of wondering if this ship has, you can swap those railguns out for other things. Like I said, some ships you can sometimes put stuff in that you can't typically put on other ships, so I'm not sure about this one. But heavy, 14 heavy railguns, it's very powerful, especially if you swap that out for Gauss guns, that you could have a very, very impressive alpha strike with that. Let's see. Got a command carrier. Got 6 F-29s, got 1 SRR, and 4 pulse beams. What the SRR is, but again, this is a bit above me. I haven't really had the opportunity to play with it, and I haven't played with carriers a ton. But then you've got the strike carrier, another different type of strike squadron. XB-17s, pulse beams, and heavy railguns. So that's actually this is unusual for a carrier. Also, again, why it's like a chief marshal ship. It's very high up there, very late game. You've got the firepower of a regular dreadnought. Well, not really a regular dreadnought. You get the firepower of a direct combat dreadnought, and you've got fighters. So that's actually quite impressive. Now we get to more, I don't know what the right word is, specialized, I guess, non-combat roles. You got the transports. These are kind of what you load up. I guess back in the day, people would have actually run resources from one planet to another. It's not as done as much anymore. There's not that there isn't a need to do it, but there's just not enough people on to bother with it. So typically, if people want resources, they just get an engineer and they just mine the resources. But another use for the transports is loading up troops and landing the troops on planets. This one, though, this one's not really a, yes, this isn't really for that, though. This one does come with, I believe, yes, this comes with 6 mining beams, so this is actually a dedicated miner. Like I said, you don't typically see people taking out dedicated miners now, just because there's so few people playing. Before, when there was a much higher player count and resources were being used up very quickly, you would actually have people who would play the dedicated mining role. You go out to a planet. Typically, you don't necessarily do it to planets you've colonized. You can, but typically you go to like non-inhabited planets or barren planets or stuff like that. You mine the resources off of them, you bring them back to a regular planet, and then you can use those resources to build things on that planet. You can mine the planets, but if I remember correctly, it's been a while since I've had to do it, but if I remember correctly, they do have a finite amount of resources on them, although they may reset every so often. But the idea is when there was a much larger player count and the resources planets had and was being used up a lot quicker, you'd go out, you'd mine, you'd bring the resources back to a planet, you'd use the resources to build up that planet. You'd also use the resources to help supply the engineers, because the engineers need the resources for building different orbital facilities. You call them orbital, but they're not just orbital. You can put them in deep space if you want as well. But those will require resources, and those are under the engineer. So that's the reason for the miner, or the extractor, call it. Like I said, it's not used as much anymore, just simply because you're trying to do a lot of things as one person, so a more general purpose ship gets used. The siege transport is your assault transport. You're going to load this up with troops, and you're going to take those troops and drop them on a planet, Starship Troopers or something. But again, that requires a transport badge, and I haven't done enough transport ship captain. I haven't used a transport enough to get that. That's a lot. The heavy transport, again, going to be kind of like that. You're going to load it up with troops, drop those troops on a planet to try and capture the planet. You could put resources on it and move it from place, but again, not done as much as it used to be done. All right, then you've got your engineering ships. Now, these are still very useful, and people who know how to use them properly are very valuable. There's 3 of them. Again, I don't have this one, probably because I'm not a fleet admiral or a platinum engineer. You have to do a lot of building to get to platinum engineer. But these things, they have some ability to mine. This one's got 2 mining beams, and this has got 3. But the primary purpose of these things are to build support facilities. You can build weapons platforms, you can build sensor platforms, you can build ECM platforms to help hide things. You can build resupply hubs. The resupply hubs are extremely valuable because it allows you to build, like, off in deep space, a resupply hub. You can put down an ECM emitter to hide that resupply hub, and then during heavy combat, instead of going all the way back to a friendly planet to repair and rearm, friendly ships can then go to your resupply hub that you've set up, rearm and resupply there, a lot closer to the combat that's taking place. So these are very, very, very useful. They're also what you use on planets. If you're trying to build up a planet, you'll go to the planet with the engineer, and you will build buildings on the planet that then help that planet do certain things. So you've got energy generation, you've got farms, you've got what's the right, domes. You've got like colonial domes for people to live in. You've got barracks for building troops. You've got planetary shields. You've got jump drive interdiction fields, so you can stop people from going into FTL around the planet. You've got planetary defense guns that will shoot at enemy ships that are in orbit of the planet. And then you've got like sensors and ECM electronic warfare things that you can put on the planet. If you build up a planet properly, now granted, planets do have a limited amount of things that you can put on them, so you'll have to balance that out. And there's people who've played this game in the past or currently. So every now and then people will hop on, like I said, that are very good at building up planets, and they've got kind of like a method to how they like to do it for setting up planets for different roles and different things, because you can also put mines and stuff on them to like mine resources. Also, putting shipyards on a planet allows you to spawn ships from that planet. So it's a very useful thing. And you build planets correctly for different things, and you can it becomes very useful. For example, you might want like a heavy industrial world so that you can have a planet that you can spawn dreadnoughts and some of the bigger ships from. Like I said, because the resources required for spawning some of these ships gets quite crazy. For example, this planet you can't spawn a new dreadnought from this planet. This dreadnought requires way more resources than the planet has, and it's a higher technology than the planet has. So, but if you set up the planet with the proper mining facilities and the proper industrial facilities and the proper technology facilities, you could pull a dreadnought. But not every planet can. So you want to manage that properly. And the AI will do it, but they're not as good at it as players are. So that's kind of what the engineers are. They kind of like that underlying industrial sector for your faction. Let's see, and then you've got supply. Now, supply again are a unsung hero of the They are in these dinky little ships that are not very tough. They can be swatted quite easily if the enemy is so inclined. Thankfully, the AI is not typically smart enough to do it. Players, on the other hand, they will be. But these are very important to the fleet. They're kind of like the mobile supply hubs. I mentioned how the engineers can build supply hubs, and you can use those to resupply and rearm. These ships essentially allow you to do it on the go. They're your underway replenishment of sorts. They can follow a fleet around, they can resupply their ammo, and they can repair damage. So these can really keep a fleet in the fight and on the go without having to break contact with the enemy and resupply at a resupply depot or go to a friendly planet. These can stick with the fleet and you can stay in the fight. If it's a large fleet engagement, maybe you back off a little bit and let some of the other ships, take the front engagement, but they can really keep a fleet in the fight for the long term. Then you get to stations. Now, I don't have any of these. I've got some friends that have got them, but I personally do not. These are definitely late stage. They are not... They are mobile in the same sense that a snail is mobile. They do not move fast at all. Their maneuverability is 0. But they are extremely powerful. For example, this is a support one. Now, this is not so much direct combat, but it can repair ships around it. It can resupply ships around it. And it's going to be way more tanky than any of the resupply platforms or supply ships. It takes a lot to take a station out. You don't just smack a station with a destroyer or a cruiser. You probably are wanting to come with a much more powerful, like a dreadnought is pretty much what you're going to need to counter a station with, and even then a single dreadnought may not be enough to break a station's defenses. Although, given time, you could probably kill a support station with a dreadnought, but I would hope that if you're in a support station, you've got friends with you. Then you've got the line station. The line station is actually a combat station. It carries a lot of missiles, it has a lot of beam weapons, and it carries a ridiculous amount of variance torpedoes. This one, you do not bring a single dreadnought to fight, you bring multiple dreadnoughts to fight this thing, because I have seen this ship eat dreadnoughts for breakfast. And if you're smart about how you do it, and you cycle your shields properly, and you keep your shields, keep your strong shields facing your opponent and your weak shields away from your opponent, you can almost take entire fleets on with this thing. It is insane. Yeah, that's partly why the thing is a Grand Admiral and requires pretty much every badge in the game in order to pull it. Then you've got the sensor command base. This one's going to sit in the back line, not so much directly engaging. Oh, I forgot to mention. So, yes, their ability to fly around at sublight speed is slow, very slow. But they do have the ability to go into FTL. And they do also have the ability to generate wormholes. There is a long cooldown for that, but they can move around using their wormholes. If they so desire, they can also move you or the enemy around with their wormholes. So It's a very useful tactic. Now, the sensor one, I haven't seen this one used as much, but it has, let's see, yeah, it's got a lot of ECCM on it. It has fighters, so it can deploy fighters at long range. It's got plenty of pulse beams, and it's got heavy beam lasers. So again, with those heavy beam lasers, it's going to be able to reach out a lot further and hit enemy strike craft trying to come towards. But this is typically going to sit in the back line, way back, and deploy fighters and harass people with lasers. But also with the ECCM, it's going to be able to break enemies' ECM, and you're going to use it for electronic warfare. But again, with that many squadrons, it's definitely nothing to use that. And that is all the craft for the ICC. I would show you some of the others, but again, this video is getting quite long at this point, and I still haven't actually shown you guys any of the gameplay or how you actually do things, and I should get to that. Also, the other problem is I can't remember how I swap to the other factions. I know there's a way to do it. I can't remember if it requires... I don't remember. It might require you to have special permissions from the admin to do it. I know I've got some friends that can do it. They may have gotten permissions from... I think you could do it back in the day, but again, things around the game have changed. I should look into doing that sometime. Maybe I'll make another video once I figure out how you do that. That definitely got changed at some point. I haven't looked into how that got changed. So it's a good idea to decide what faction you want to be a part of and just stick with that one, at least as of right now. Alright, so gameplay. Let's see, what should we pull to demonstrate that? We'll pull the heavy cruiser for right now and do some scouting. Been a while since checked things out. Well, I was on a few days ago and captured a planet. So when you're actually in the game, this is kind of what it looks like. For the ICC, you have shielding. So green is your armor, and blue is your shields. ICC are pretty much the only faction in the game that has shields. There is the MI, but the MI have not showed up in a very long time. They're kind of an event faction. They'll only spawn if the admin of the server allow them to spawn, and they're also pretty much nigh unkillable. They are insane, extremely difficult to fight, partly why they're kind of a type thing, and they have not shown up in years. So I have no idea if they'll ever show up again. There's just not enough people on the server to actually effectively fight the MI if they were to show up. So I think that's why they don't. But yeah, the Kaluth are armor and cloaking. The UGTO are armor and brawling weapons. They are way more up in your face than the ICC are. Well, since we're here at a planet, I should show... This is a heavy cruiser. I do not have it fitted out with the default weapons of a heavy cruiser. I've swapped some things out. I have a few fusion torpedoes, but most of the stuff I have is Sabo rockets. As you're looking here, you can kind of see what these things will do. This has an amplified pulse laser. It's got a max range of 450 GU galactic units. They don't use kilometers or feet or anything like that. In this game, they measure things in galactic units. But this can range out to 450. And I've seen fighter squadrons that are hitting you further out than that. So that's why these things are not easy to use against fighters. But they have enough range to hit missiles that come. Let's see. You've got your rail guns, your Gauss guns, and like I said, these can be swapped out. So if you click on it, it'll show you the arcs of fire. So this rail gun is in this corner, and the arc of fire that direction. This one's arcs of fire are more forward and kind of angled back. This Heavy Gauss gun is in the back, kind of on the top there, so it has some fields of fire that angle kind of forward in the right angles. Again, another forward firing railgun. Let's see, and then this is a forward firing heavy Gauss gun, and another. So you got two on this one. You got two heavy mounts in the front, one heavy mount in the back. But even though they're kind of that, you still have really decent arcs of fire. Then you've got a fusion torpedo there. Similar placements to the rail guns for those. This one's more on the side, but again, kind of a forward firing arc there. And then you've got the Sabo rockets. These would be fusion torpedoes by default, but I kind of like the fusion rockets, so I've been using them. The torpedo range, you're looking at 600 galactic units for those. Your damage is between 1800 to 3000. Your average damage between 1800 and 2900. And different things can affect what that's going to be. Your Sabo rockets, on the other hand, are 720 galactic units for the range. You got a damage of 7,400 to about 12,000. The recharge time is 15 seconds. Compared to the fusion reload time, that is 6 seconds. But you'll notice there's also a difference in the energy cost. And not showing here, I know fusion torpedoes have splash damage. Remember where you look up the splash. Oh wait, sorry. There it is. Average damage. I read that. No, so that's the average damage, or sorry, the damage is 1800 to 3000. Your area damage is 1800 to 2900 for those. So they have an area effect. But like I said, you've got a shorter range. The Sabo rockets have a slightly longer range. And if I remember correctly, the damage amount that you're seeing on the Sabo rockets is slightly misleading, because if you press Control and then click on your screen, you can actually put down a marker, and you can use that for a number of things. One of the useful things for that is you can shoot at that marker, and that actually kind of lets you shoot at Kalu ships even when they're cloaked. You can kind of guess where you think they are and then fire, and if you guess correctly, the weapons fire will still hit them. You don't necessarily have to put the marker directly on them, as long as the rounds actually can't hit them. So, let's see, for example, let's fire. Let's see. Oh, I fired torpedoes, and well, actually, we'll go into combat. But yeah, I believe they fire multiple rockets per volley, whereas the torpedoes will just fire one. Kind of like with the rail guns too. They fire multiple times per volley, not just one. But yeah, these are kind of a mid-range engagement weapon. The rail guns, they've got a range out to 1200 GU. And you can kind of see the damage there. Gauss guns, well, these are heavy Gauss guns, so they're going to be quite a bit further than the just a regular rail gun. But the Gauss guns have got a range out to 1500 GU. And you can see there they have a high damage, but their recharge is 10 seconds compared to the railgun 5 seconds. But like I said, you can swap these out. So, oh, okay, you can put a variant autocannon on. I guess you can just put those on every slot. That must have been a change that I'm not tracking that happened at some point. But yeah, so you can put a variance autocannon in this spot, but if you do that, you have to take that into consideration. Well, while your recharge time is 2.4 seconds and you have no ammo concerns, your damage does change. things. Your damage goes down a bit, and your range is only 600 GU, so you're losing like half your engagement. But hey, if you like to be a close-up brawler, that may be a good choice for you. You can also put on a regular Gauss gun and a regular Gauss gun. Okay, so there's no difference between the heavy. I thought there was, but I was mistaken. So Gauss guns, just across the board, heavy or regular, are going to be 1500. Longest of the kinetic ranges, unless you got an ion cannon, but that's a very specific weapon. And that's 4,000 to 7,000 damage, but again, compared to the railgun's got a much higher rate of fire. You fire almost, well, you fire twice in the time that the railgun, the Gauss guns. The advantage of the Gauss gun is not necessarily it's a DPS, but it's range. And it does hit pretty hard. It does seem to be very effective against armor. But you'll have to decide what best suits yours. Also, the other advantage I forgot, 2 railguns compared to Gauss guns is ammunition. You can carry a lot of ammunition. Gauss gun. Alright, let's see. This ship has got focused ECCM, so if you have a target and you activate that, that'll try and keep it from stealthing. It's not really that useful against the Kaluth because, like I said, the Kaluth actually have a full-on cloaking system, but it would be more useful against like the UGTO. This is a very useful thing. It's a pulse shield. It's got a range up to 300 GU. It is a destructive pulse that you can fire that will destroy incoming missiles, mines, or fighters, but they need to be within that 300 GU, so you need to time its activation properly. And then stats that are, of course, very useful for you to keep track of is your shields. So your shield strength, as you can tell, you've got 4 different directions you have to pay attention to, and your composite armor. Now, these are all things that are going to take damage before your hull. Once these hit 0 in an arc, you'll start taking damage. Now, if shields go down, your armor will start taking damage. You don't need to have all your armors depleted to start taking damage to your hull. For take damage on one armor, and that armor goes down to nothing, then that arc can be destroyed. This looks like that's the rear armor. That's the side armor. Front armor. This one is central armor. Okay. Once those are depleted, then you're within a certain arc. So, for example, if I was taking hits from here, and all this side's armor, as shown by the green, was depleted, and I keep taking shots from here, that's going to start eating into my hull, despite having armor in directions. Although, considering like the central armor, anyway, you can kind of tell where you're at by the status on it. Now, a lot of things can be swapped out. Now, some things can't because there's like only one of them. Or the ship just doesn't have options to others. But like I said, with the rockets, you can swap those with fusion. And I've only got one laser. Hold on a minute. Got one amplified pulse beam, and the others are pulses. I could swap those out also for amplified pulse beams. Never done it before because I didn't really pay attention to it, which is kind of silly for me, but you do have to consider. Okay, so the amplified pulse beam has got a range of 50. The pulse beams have got a range of 150, but your recharge time is 1 second compared to 17.5 seconds. So yeah, if you want to rapidly hit a lot of incoming stuff, the pulse beams. If you want to hit stuff further out, but that's the amplified pulse beam, but you're going to be at a disadvantage at a quick recharge for kind of thing. So these things are definitely better for missiles. This one's better for fighters. All right. This is my tachyon drive. This is your jump drive, and it's got a fuel percentage. If you run that fuel out, you cannot jump anymore, and you're going to have to sublight to wherever you're going. So definitely keep that in mind, because you probably do not want to end up stranded in the middle of deep space and have to sublight your way all the way back to a friendly planet or resupply point. That kind of sucks. Now, that said, FTL in this game. So this is the star system I'm in. I can FTL anywhere I want, and you can see these gates. These gates allow you to jump from one gate to the other to another star system. Theoretically, I do have enough jump fuel. I could just jump to the other system. Granted, that's going to take longer than just going through a gate, and of course, it's going to use up more fuel. I could end up here with very little fuel, and that would limit my operations system. So it's better to take the gates, but sometimes, like I said, different tactics. The enemy could potentially be watching the gate. They could have set up a lot of defenses at the gate. So perhaps, depending on the situation, maybe you do need to use your ship's FTL to get to a system. Now, good show. You can tell your ship to directly jump to things, but you need to be careful about that. If you have a red line showing, that means there's something blocking you, and you're going to need to get your ship moved until that line turns white. Another thing you can do is you can you can activate your jump on your own, a blind jump essentially, and that if you hit Shift J, you'll be able to do that. Now, you can control your ship's speed and turn with the WASD keys, or you can use the arrow keys, or you can rebind it as you want. If you use the A and D keys for your turning, it's going to keep turning your ship a little bit until you counter it. I prefer a little more direct control over it than that. I don't really care for that, so I typically use the arrow keys, because the arrow keys, it'll keep turning your ship as long as you're pressing it, and it'll stop as soon as you let it. Or you can rebind them. I'm just lazy. So that's the gate that's over there. I can press F and tell my ship to follow it. My ship will align itself, and then since it's far enough away, it will jump to it. Now, where you end up in relation to your target when you jump is dependent on your speed, at least if you're doing the whole follow thing. Because I was at full speed, I didn't land directly on the gate. If my sublight velocity had been at 0, I would have nearly landed directly on the gate. So that's something to take into consideration when planning out your tactics. Now, we'll go through the gate here, and as you can see, we are through. We are now in another star system. Navigation, which is the hotkey to do. I'm still looking at the old systems. You kind of want to scroll out and click on something in the new system. And now there's probably other ways to do it, but that's how I do it. All right, as you can see, it looks like either another player has been active or the NPCs have been doing this. I don't think it's the NPCs. Could be. Hold on. Yeah, it looks like the NPCs have actually been setting up recon platforms and supplies at this planet. Now, it actually kind of makes sense that that's the NPCs. My platform there, because of where they're set. Typically, players would not be. Interesting. It's a Caluth ship that's sitting. Typically, players would not set them that close. There's some more set up here. just outside that planet. Kind of interesting. More have been set up around this planet. I captured this planet a few days ago. When I captured that planet, I had stuff set out further away from the planet so it couldn't get hit by the planetary defenses. Looks like the AI has set up some stuff since I came. But, okay, so if we want to jump over here, saw a Kaluth ship. I'm not seeing... Okay. Looks like it's moving around, but I'm not getting an icon on it. So it could be... Well, we'll go over there and invest. We'll jump to those supply hubs. Can't jump through that gas giant. Very bad for my health. Could technically make the jump, but my ship will be destroyed. Alright. Yes, like I thought. They weren't showing up in the map, but there are definitely enemy ships over here. So, looks like the AI's been having a long-running battle. That Wyvern is damaged. It's actually in my DOS gun range, so we'll pick it up. Like those connected. His hull is down to 30%. His armor's at 23%, so very juicy target. Look like they're connecting. Armor down to 24%. There's a lot of fighters out there. We're within. Oh, there he goes. And that actually, that's Shen. He's a player. Okay, interesting. He might have set up the stuff. He's in an assault dreadnought. I don't typically see a lot of players on. The other day when I took that planet, there was no one. But there are some moving around right now, which is good to see. Okay, so we've got a worker. That's going to be like the equivalent to an enemy. Chase him off. In this context, he's probably not that much of a threat. It's also AI controlled, so it's not really setting up much. Careful with your fields of fire. You can accidentally hit friendly ships. Friendly fire is a thing. So yeah, you can see my weapons fire hitting him. His hull is going down. You want to try and keep... Oh, there you go. Shinken destroyed that one. Now, who gets the kill is going to depend on who does the most damage to the target. Don't think it's based off of the final blow. I could be wrong, but I think it's based off of most damage, if I remember right. Okay, you can see the weapons fire from all those fighters. Firing far enough out that that's a problem. As you can see, my amplified pulse beam's got enough range that I can kind of hit them, but you'll notice, like, for example, the regular pulse beams are not hitting. Got this target here. Now, something else to take into consideration, when you click on something, your camera's going to focus that. That's quite useful for keeping track of the target as you're fighting with it. But you may want to take your mouse and change that and not follow it, because, for example, if you're getting really close to a planet and you're not paying attention to that planet as you're maneuvering, you could run into it. That's not good for you. That results in you dying. So, avoiding collisions with planets is typically... See, my point defense is shooting at the fighters occasionally as the longer range one is up. This is a spherical. I can never remember exactly which classes of Kaluthi ships are which. Considering this one is not firing and there's a lot of fighters out there, I think this might be a carrier class. That would be my bet. The AI does like to pull carriers for the Kaluth for some reason. Yeah, not really the best at it. Does make me wonder sometimes why, but this one, however, is a more direct combat one. Those purple beams, you can tell those are its lasers. The blue lasers tend to be the ICC ones. I can see he fired a bunch of torpedoes. I believe those might have been variance torpedoes. But you can see this guy's health is going down quite quickly. And he just, oh, he was going to cloak and then he came out of his cloak. The AI is not the best at you. Their players are way more effective using cloak than the AI. So when you're engaging the AI, it's not as big of an issue. There was also a change done to the cloak. Back in the day, the cloak was unlimited. I can't remember the reason they actually changed it to limited now. Either it was because the AI had a bad habit of just never coming out of cloak, or at some point the devs kind of felt it was becoming too powerful for them. They can't fire their weapons in their cloak, so they have to drop their cloak to full. But at one point during the game's lifespan, that cloak was unlimited. You could stay in cloak indefinitely if you wanted to. Well, providing your ship had the right power balance, but players could usually set up the power balance so that they wouldn't run out of power. But they did change that, so now cloak, regardless of whether your ship's power generation does have a limited period of time, and you will drop out of cloak. Alrighty, I'm not seeing any more. Oh, well, there's that one. A roach. These are more weapons. Railguns are always kind of a white color to them, whitish color. Gauss guns are red. And it is possible to dodge. Uncomfortable on that planet. And that's gonna hurt now. One of my shields got dropped to 57%. It's recharging. And the planet. Anyway, weapons fire can be dodged. The AI aren't as good at it as players. Players are better at it. The smaller, faster the ship you are, the easier it is to dodge incoming fire. It is something you have to consider with the unguided weapons at the longer ranges. That they may not hit. Lasers, you can't. Well, you're not going to dodge lasers because the way lasers work, they're gonna connect. But they're also a close range weapon. Once you get that close, even Gauss guns, rail guns, you're really not dodging. But projectile weapons and things like the torpedoes and the rockets and the missiles and the railguns, stuff like that, can be dodged. Missiles, because they're guided, not as easy to. I'm kind of 50-50 on that. You can dodge them and run them out of fuel. It's probably more effective just to shoot them down, though. And again, you're not likely to do the possible with a cruiser. You're probably not doing it. All right, so it looks like almost had the embarrassment of crashing into a planet there. Bad. Right. Well, I believe this planet has a ship. we'll go dock at that planet. It has. Okay. Let's see, what else should I demonstrate? A lot of things I could demonstrate, and there are upgrades that you can get for your ship. When you defeat opponents, they'll sometimes drop them. I think you can also purchase them from planets. Again, it's been a while since I did it, so some of the mechanics I'm a bit rusty on. Okay, so we have orbited this planet. There's a couple ways to do this. It's a better way to do it than the way I typically do it. I typically do it because, again, I'm lazy and I don't want to learn the keybinds. There's a keybind that lets you look at the planet that you're orbiting more directly. The way I'm doing it is the hard way of doing it, but I'm just kind of looking for uh, the shipyard. You know what? I should probably show you guys the proper way of doing this. So let me options keybinds. I know it's in here somewhere. Planets F3. Ah, it's right there. So you can hit it there too. So click on the planet, hit F3, and you look at the planet more directly. I am looking for power generators. I'm looking for the shipyard. There we go. Double click that, use structure or control U, and I will then dock my ship. The smaller your ship is, the faster you dock. The bigger your ship is, the slower it dock. All right. Well, that was a heavy cruiser. Demonstrate the dreadnought. Can I launch it from here? I can. I think. Like. Yes. Okay, good. So this is the combat dreadnought. I have got it set up entirely with Gauss guns. Like I said, you can choose other weapons. I like to do the Gauss gun build with it. Alright, Shin's telling me he wants to invade items. So F2. That one is here. Alright, well, we'll scout it out. So I don't know if, didn't really show you what the max speed of the cruiser was. If I go back and take a look, I had it at max speed at a certain time. The max speed of this ship is 59 galactic units. Oh, I should show you emergency jumps. I will demonstrate that at a certain point. Iron. Alright. We are... Okay, this planet has an interdiction field, which is a slight problem. Schengen was a bit more prepared than me, but I did want to demonstrate the... I think he brought in a jump cruiser. I don't know if he's got bombs on that or not, but he can deploy a wormhole so he can get out of the jump drive suppression field. And that has MIRV bombs, and he's dumping MIRV bombs at Ring. It's bombing the planet. Right. I wonder, does this? No, it does not. That's a smart thing to do. Now, also, another thing to take into consideration is that the tachyon drive, the different charge periods. Okay, it looks like we're getting enemies showing up on the other side of the planet. I probably could stay and cover him while he does his bombing. That is the advantage to having multiple people. I is definitely interested in the fact that we're trying to take the place. And I think he cloaked. There it is. He cloaked. See, that's the... Oh, he's up again. Probably using... Oh, he jumped away. And opened a wormhole. I'm not going to use that because for all I know he opened that to push the AI through. Or he used it to jump back. He was taking damage, and I'm not seeing here. He may have used that to jump back to the planet to rearm his bombs and But I'm going to go to planet though, and we're going to pick up a engineer, and I'll demonstrate how the engineer's workings to you. Very important thing, very useful when you're invading a planet, especially with very few people, because it allows you to rearm and resupply without having to go super far. You don't have to jump halfway across the system to go to a friendly planet. But I don't remember if I finished saying this off, but depending on the size of your ship will depend on the recharge time of your tachyon drive. So a scout is going to charge really fast, a dreadnought is going to be very slow, and a station is going to take forever to recharge. Find the shipyard here. Oh, that's one way to do it. Okay. Dock this thing and we'll go get an engineer. I'll probably have to get supplies for the engineer. The planet might have some. Alright, so eventually set up a forward operating base. Don't really want to spawn from there. I want to be closer to spawn from Yahoo. Alright. We've got the engineer. I don't have any supplies on him. Forgot that we can do that. Sources 84,000. Okay. How to call up resources. And it. Let's see, does that actually use up a... Okay, that mechanic may have been changed. It might have been a really old one from way back. That's another thing. Way back in the day, the map used to be a lot bigger. As it stands right now, the map is... It's supposed to be 12 systems. I don't think it is. I feel like that's wrong. 3, 4, 5. Yeah, no, they... Huh, that's interesting. It's supposed to be like 12-star systems. It's not actually 12-star systems. Not sure why that is. I know, like, on the server description, like the meta server. Yeah, this is the meta server. There's a scenario server and a meta server. The meta server, it says it's like 12 systems. It's not actually 12 systems. It's a lot more than 12 systems. I don't know when they decided to change that. They've been playing around with the different size of the map because of the number of players that actually play. but I'm not keeping up. I haven't been keeping up with all the news. But at the map has been bigger than this. Back in the day, it was a lot bigger. This is the current size. It's still a pretty decent sized map. I think Earth is still on here someplace, but Earth is controlled by the UGTO. Well, typically it can. I don't think anything is technically static. It can't be captured. I believe everything can. The ICC at times have controlled Earth, which is kind of funny, considering that the UGTO is the Earth faction. The ICC are more of an independence faction. Oh, it'd be on here someplace. I think, unless they took it out. But anyway, I think he's chatting with me. I have not been paying attention. But I'm not being probably as tactical as you probably would like, but I'm trying to show off as much gameplay as possible. So this is the slightly slower, boring part of it, at least for those who aren't into mining. It doesn't take as long as some games that have mining in them, but it will take a little bit of time to get stuff mined. The minerals stack up to 5,000, and I think I can have 4 or 5 different stacks in this ship's hold. While we're doing this, I can show you the planetary window. So when you're in this planetary window, you can click on empty slots, and providing that there's enough space on the planet, you can build different things, and these different things do different things or do different stuff for the planet. Let's see, as we stand right now, it's actually kind of funny that we can build drone warriors. Drone warriors are the Caluth infantry, but I guess since we captured the planet and took their barracks, we can build their troops. I forgot that was a thing. I typically do not engage in the planetary buildings and stuff like that. That's not something I've gone too deep into. I've got a friend that's very experienced with that, but I do know the basics of it. I tend to be more of a combat direct person, but different things do different things. So let's see here. You've got bunkers. See, this is a bunker base 1, a heavy point defense for the planet, so that'll like shoot down incoming bombs and stuff. Another defense base, hybrid defense base, protects helps protect against bombardment. Has point defense on or not, or if it just hardens the world a bit. Then you've got offensive bases. These directly shoot at an offense. These shoot at enemy ships in orbit. And now this is another version of the point defense. Okay. I can never remember what of that at. That fleet. Oh, wait, fleet is what I am. I want faction. Wants info on Ion. I probably have enough resources. Probably set up. A insert grid for that. Jump drive disabled. Out of range. I am a juicy target for the enemy, and as you can see, the planet is shooting at me. Great. Shields and attack drop to 71%. You can use your numpad to redirect energy to different shields that are being depleted, which is a useful thing. The fun little tactic that the ICC have. Now that we're all going to come to a stop so that I can build some things. Alright, so in order to build, if you press Control and hold your mouse, you can then click on place and it'll show you some stuff, show you a location. Let's see, what's a good one? We'll do a recon platform. I believe this is the one that helps with setting up a stealth field. Well, not really a stealth field, an ECM field, which helps hide your signature. It doesn't hide you visually. Well, it kinda does. The game mechanics for a bit are weird, but it makes it difficult for the enemy to find you. You'll see the different times that it takes to build the thing, and it'll tell you the different amount of resources that you need to build the thing. All right, there we go, and it's projecting out an ECM field, and you'll notice I've got 100% stealth because I'm sitting next to this ECM field. It's dropped my signature to negative 10.8, and I've got the little eye thingy that's popped up saying I'm stealthed. Technically, the Kaluthi don't know I'm here. I mean, if there was a player, they would be smart enough to like be able to see on the map that I disappeared and like, oh, okay, that's weird. But the NPCs are thankfully not quite that smart. We will then set up a supply. Oh, whoops, I goofed. I mean, it's not the end of the world. It still works. It's a bitch to do it, but I am now building a supply platform on top of the sensor platform, which is retarded, but it's a 2001 game. Not everything is necessarily as polished as you'd expect from AAA, not even from a AA. But if you want to cheese that, you can. I don't think there's actually a negative for doing it. It just it's silly. All right, there's building that. Other one. It's usually a good idea to build multiple supply platforms. Yes, just go about your day, Kaluthi. I really want to fight you right now. A little bit of background. The Kaluthi are the aliens in the setting. Some sort of... They make bioships. They grow their ships instead of build them like the humans do. Everybody refers to them as crabs. To be honest, if you look into the lore, I don't think there's anything that says specifically that they're crab people, but their ships kind of look like crab type things, so everybody refers to them as space crabs. There's lore for all the factions. The UGTO are kind of a corporate overlords based off of Earth. The ICC are outer colony independence faction. They declared independence from the UGTO. UGTO didn't like it. They had a war. Then the ICC and the UGTO kind of had a truce when the Kaluth showed up, and enemy of my enemy type of thing. And damn it, I made that mistake again. And so they ended up fighting against each other. That's kind of how the backstory goes for the for before the game starts. But the time of the game starting, the UGTO and the ICC and the Kaluth are all at war. But there's kind of a lore. I don't think it's been recorded anywhere, but there is kind of a lore to the game after the initial start of the game. The ICC and the UGTO players have negotiated back in the game's heyday. That is, not so much now because there wasn't really a need for it, because there's too few players actually on, and players. And I'm a dumbass, and I built on top of a building I built on top of twice already. Oh well. The UGTO and the ICC players back in the day, like I said, when the server populations were a lot higher, did create alliances or temporary alliances, and agreed to not actually shoot at each other and fight the UGTO together, because there's been points of time where the UGTO, sorry, I'm messing up faction names. The ICC and the UGTO made an unofficial alliance, because you can't actually do that in game, but the different clans and players and all that stuff kind of got together, agreed to not fight each other, and they would just fight the Kaluth, because of the problems that the Kaluth were causing for them. They were taking a lot of systems. They were doing really, really well. So they allied and pushed back, and those alliances eventually would fall apart, and the UGTO and the ICC would eventually end up fighting each other again. It was an interesting back and forth. I don't think that there was ever an alliance with any of the human factions and the Kaluth. I could be wrong. I don't remember any of that ever happening. So as you can see, that's kind of gets too close to the supply platforms, and so his weaponry is detonating on the supply platform's shields. Something to take into consideration. And as you can see, there is an up and down, like I talked about before. Since he's a dreadnought and so much more tonnage than me, he just kind of came along and kind of pushed me up. Something else to take into consideration: the supply platforms are very useful. They resupply normal weapons. They do not resupply bombs, however. So if you're bombing a planet, you have a resupply forward base like this set up, and you return to the base with a bomber to resupply your bombs for bombing the planet, you won't be able to resupply. You need to go back to a regular planet. It's slightly annoying, but that's how that works. Ow. stuff starts blowing up. So that is the usefulness of the engineer. I can set up sensor stations, EOR stations. I can set up supply platforms. I can set up weapons platforms. I didn't actually show that, but there's a torpedo platform, a sensor. Oh, I showed you those. There's a gun platform that's a railguns, and a defense platform. The defense platform is laser, so it's kind of like a point defense grid. We'll head back to Yahoo. Dock up. I'm out of supplies anyway. Alrighty. So that has been a bit about DarkSpace. Fortunately, I'm kind of running out of time for this, so maybe I'll make another video again. I appreciate if you've gotten this far in the video and suffered through my my inexperience at streaming, but if I do this again, hopefully I'll get better at it over time, and it'll be more enjoyable to watch. Hopefully you learned something interesting about the game DarkSpace. Hopefully you're actually interested in the game DarkSpace, and I haven't actually turned you off from it and actually piqued your interest in it. As more people playing the game would be a very nice thing to see. It is a really fun game, lots and lots of fun mechanics, and I personally kind of think it was a bit ahead of its time. I kind of think if it was remade with with modern tech now, it would be a lot more. It would have more people interested in it. But it was built in early 2000 and early 2000s, in 2001 to be specific. So there's a lot of limitations to the game based off of that. But regardless of that, I still think it's a really solid game. It's just sad that more people aren't aware. Anyway, so you all take care, have fun, and maybe I'll see you later.